Through conducting this research, I have been confronted by my own unconscious bias regarding autistic people and the stereotype that they are rigid thinkers, which limits their ability to be creative. In an article published by Embrace Autism in 2023, describing common misconceptions surrounding creativity and imagination in autism, the question of whether autistic persons can be creative is simply answered yes, as autistics have been shown to have exceptional originality of thought, and rather asks how people with autism engage with creativity differently from neurotypicals. Additionally, the article states that the challenges for those with autism in communicating their internal and physical experiences in the same way as neurotypicals is that which makes it appear that they are lacking in creative and imaginative thought and ability. Another factor to consider is that many autistic people face challenges in communicating, processing, and conceptualizing, which are all heavily required within art studies, particularly at GCSE level and above. Further to this, there is a huge focus on students being able to critically reflect on both other artists' work and their own work, justifying creative decisions or use of materials, for example. Autists often struggle to communicate these ideas or translate their thoughts. This highlights another difficult aspect for some autistic students, which is the literacy aspect of art. There is still a large amount of reading and required within academic art studies. There are many reasons why autistic children may find art classes challenging. First of all, the classroom can be very overstimulating to the senses in terms of lots of artwork on the walls, equipment and materials out on the sides, different seating plans to accommodate certain practical activities, which can often be noisy and require a movement around the classroom. All of these things contribute to the extraneous load of pupils in the classroom and can negatively affect the learning environment, which further exacerbates the sensory difficulties of autistic students. When reaching GCSE and A-level, the literacy and processing required to understand the exam board mark schemes, grade boundaries and criteria can be quite advanced, due to the use of complex vocabulary and ambiguous language. As the teacher, I often myself find that these written documents can be overwhelming and difficult to interpret. It is also challenging to try and envisage what these written criteria look like in the form of visual artwork. Another problem I encountered during my practice at Placement School A is how autistic students interpret success in art. One particular student, who has an ASD diagnosis, struggled significantly to understand constructive criticism and low marking regarding feedback that their observational studies were not realistic, as per the success criteria. The student was unable to visualize what was not realistic about their recordings and was not receptive of the feedback. In this case, should the success criteria be changed to accommodate this student in terms of revising the requirement that their recordings must be realistic? After all, autistic people often view everyday things in very different ways to their neurotypical counterparts. Through my experience teaching in my first placement school, I observed and implemented into practice several adaptations to my teaching to enable pupils of all abilities to engage in the learning to the best of their ability. These included using light boxes or tracing paper to enable pupils to draw outlines or details, use of alternative materials, sentence prompts for help in reflective writing or artist analysis, use of technology, for example, allowing students to do digital drawing on iPads, larger paper for those who struggle to work on small scale, inspiration banks to help students generate ideas, and the use of secondary source images. Whilst these measures were extremely useful, it did not address the issue of the subject matter and curriculum. Students are still expected to work within the prescribed parameters of a topic, despite them not having a personal interest in it, which can act as a huge barrier to autistic students. If they do not see the value in what they are doing, oftentimes they will struggle to take part and learning will not take place. This is where the argument for special interest projects becomes so poignant. In Placement School A, my Year 10 GCSE class was studying a topic for the whole year about plants, birds and insects. Whilst the adaptive measures outlined went some way to promote engagement in 2 students with ASD, one could argue that if those students are disinterested by the subject matter, then their engagement will still be limited and therefore academic achievement is compromised. A common trait of autistic young people is their intense focus on a small number of core interests that consume their attention, sometimes to the detriment of engagement with their learning. These are known as special interests or SIs. Often they are regarded as troublesome obsessions, restricted and repetitive, and can make an autistic person appear tuned out from or disinterested in the wider world. From a psychiatric viewpoint, such activity is deemed as dysfunctional and a pathologized abnormality. As a result, SIs have not always been incorporated or built upon within a school context and may actually be discouraged. However, more often than not, such interests are regarded by autistic people as essential to their well-being and sense of fulfillment. A study by Lydia Davey, an experienced specialist autism teaching assistant, found that teachers and TAs often need to differentiate the curriculum and can find this challenging as autistic pupils are often not motivated to engage in tasks that their peers do, almost without question. Davey developed an SI map for autistic students with their families and the school to determine the specialist interest or interests of the autistic child, which can then be used to create links to the curriculum to aid differentiation. During Davey's study, positive responses were given which showed that using SIs motivated the child to engage in tasks, develop their relationship with staff, and, for some, led to an increase in expressive language in both spoken and written form. Davey argues that the inclusion of autistic students is made easier and more enjoyable if their SIs are incorporated. Schemas are extremely important for learning because they serve as mental frameworks that help pupils organize and interpret information based on prior knowledge, experiences, and feelings. Creating schema encourages efficient processing of new information, promotes the forming of memory, improves problem-solving ability, reduces cognitive overload, and facilitates greater understanding and adaptability to new information. Where autistic students can significantly struggle to process information, the links to schema are of the utmost importance, further arguing for the benefits of using their individual special interests to promote engagement and learning.